Let me talk to him. Let me talk to him.
Welcome to the Matt Schneidman Show.
That's a guy who is an intriguing one because he was an undrafted free agent.
Follow Matt on Twitter and Instagram at Matt Schneidman.
This is good stuff.
Or use the talk and text line at 1-414-799-1973.
If he can carry over what he's done in practice to games, then maybe we could start talking about, okay, Packers might have something here.
Now with Doug Russell, here's Matt Schneidman on the game.
Every time that Flo Rida song, Low, if any old heads out there aren't familiar with it, it brings me back to like a 7th grade disco. That was like the song of the times when we go to the raves in middle school and high school. But I'm 28 years old now, but you always got to stay true to your roots musically. Anyway, I'm Matt Schneidman. He's Doug Russell. This, of course, is the aptly named Matt Schneidman Show here on Tuesday, September 26th. 2 days out from as pivotal of a Week 4 game as Week 4 games get here in Green Bay between the Packers and Lions. Both 2-1 with the Vikings and Bears 0-3 each. This game could matter a lot in a couple months in terms of tiebreakers and whatnot. It seems, and I don't want to get too far head over feet on this one or whatever the saying is this the new NFC North rivalry? The Bears stink. These two teams have really solid young cores. I understand Packers-Bears is the historical rivalry, but in terms of teams that will be fighting for this division for years to come, how these two teams are set up compared to the other two, I don't want to rule the Vikings out yet. I'm ruling the Bears out right now, unless they get Caleb Williams maybe. I don't want to rule the Vikings out yet since they still have a lot of talent. That's true. But my question to you, Doug, is because I think there's a chance that Packers-Lions, much like Yankees and Rays, has become somewhat of the new Yankees and Red Sox. Not this year, though. I think Packers and Lions could be the new 1-2 punch in the NFC North. Sloughing? What the hell does that mean? For sure. Anytime your coach is biting off kneecaps for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, you're going to be gritty. Listen, I think one of the biggest storylines entering this game is the players on each side who have been hit with the injury bug. We know the deal with the Packers. They played most of or all of last Sunday's game against the Saints without 5, 6 of their 10, 11 best players. They got some I shouldn't say they got some encouraging news. We, as reporters, got the news today through I guess, non-traditional sources that Aaron Jones and Christian Watson are expected to play. Now, the PR staff for the Packers coaches these players to not divulge too much specific information regarding injuries and availability, specifically not about other players. They always keep it vague. You know, we've asked Christian Watson in the past about his progression. He said, oh, it's just day by day. Day by day, day by day is what everyone says. Romeo Dobbs is talking about potentially getting guys back. Unprompted, he goes, we'll have 33 back. I looked at Bill Huber. I was like, did you just hear that? Romeo Dobbs just told us that Aaron Jones is playing. And then Christian Watson was straight up asked by Chris Roth, are you playing Thursday? And he said, that's the plan. Now, listen, the plan is for me to drive home after this game and make it home safely. That's the plan. Doesn't mean it's necessarily going to happen. Now, I find it hard to believe that if that's the plan right now, which is a different tone that he struck today than he has in past weeks, that the Packers aren't going to, make him run 10,000 sprints. I think we can safely assume that both 33 and 9 are back on the field on Thursday night. That's massive for this offense, especially going into a game like this. Aaron Jones is arguably their most important player besides Jordan Love on the offensive side of the ball. The running game, the passing game really needs him. The passing game, not as much as the running game, because there's, I think, a big drop-off in the running game when A.J. Dillon is the feature back, with all due respect. There's that line again, my favorite line. And Christian Watson, I dug up some interesting numbers today. So Christian Watson ranked tied for 5th in the NFL last season with 13.98 average air yards per reception. So essentially, the ball traveled about 14 yards in the air, or air yards per target, sorry. So every time Christian Watson was targeted, the ball traveled about 14 yards in the air. That was tied for 5th in the NFL. Layman's terms, Packers throw the ball a long way, or Aaron Rodgers threw the ball a long way when targeting Watson. Now, another interesting stat, Jordan Love leads the NFL right now in average air yards per target with 10.4, according to Next Gen Stats, meaning he throws the ball farther on average per pass than anyone else in the league. But there's a discrepancy between his average air yards per target and average air yards per completion, which is 3.6 yards less than his average air yards per target. That discrepancy of minus 3.6, I know I'm getting, inside baseball here, but that difference between average air yards per target and average air yards per completion is the second biggest discrepancy or disparity in the NFL, meaning they're taking shots, but they're not completing them at a high enough rate, essentially, is what that means. Mac Jones is the only one with a bigger disparity in the NFL. Getting back the guy who, more than anyone else on the team, is able to help generate some of those explosive plays, whether it's catching a bomb or taking a short pass and taking it the distance like he did against the Eagles last season when Jordan Love filled in. Getting Christian Watson back will be huge, even if he's on a pitch count, because if anything, defenses have to compensate for what he can do, which is beat you over the top. There's not really anyone in that offense right now that you have to worry too much about in regards to doing that. Mm-hmm. It's an inexact science when to play these guys, when to not. And Matt LaFleur, when he spoke to us this afternoon, late afternoon, didn't really confirm that both guys are playing. He said he was cautiously optimistic about Aaron Jones. He said he appreciated Christian Watson's mindset of the plan is to play, but he needs to be medically cleared first. And I'm sure he did. Well, he seemed pretty happy. So, Doug, just a aside here, I've received texts from 2 different people saying your mic is muted and they can't hear you on the stream.
Okay.
Now it's not.
Now, it should be okay now. I guess a button wasn't pushed. All right. Maybe that was it.
Okay, let me check
Sorry about
and
that.
see if that works. I mean, I appreciate you wanting to silence yourself and just give me the floor.
Well, I think that's what the people who are listening on the stream really want. They just want to hear Matt Schneidman on the Matt Schneidman Show. They don't need my musings.
Yes, they do.
Hopefully it's better now. Our board, you have to understand that the board that's set up in front of me looks like I'm flying the space shuttle. And if there's one thing that's off,
okay, we can hear
everything
you.
Else up.
We can hear you.
Yay. Sorry about that. Sorry about that, everybody listening on the stream.
You don't have to apologize. Anyway.
But I appreciate the heads up.
You know, we talked about Aaron Jones and Christian Watson, but there are a handful of other important players kind of up in the air. David Bakhtiari, obviously, he'll be up in the air probably every week. The All-Pro left tackle. He was, you know, as I've explained this week, since the Packers don't practice, they didn't practice yesterday. They held a walkthrough today. Bakhtiari was listed as a DNP both days. Obviously, we don't read too much into that because he'll be a DNP even when he's perfectly healthy and playing. Zach Tom, who injured his knee late in Sunday's game against the Saints, their starting right tackle, their do-it-all offensive lineman, of course, someone who I would put in the top 10 players on the team, was upgraded from a DNP yesterday in the practice report estimation to a limited participant today in the walkthrough or estimate. It's a walkthrough, so they all participate, I'm assuming. But really, these 2 quote-unquote injury reports are just estimations of their participation if they would have practiced. So Zach Tom upgraded to a limited participant. Jair Alexander upgraded to a limited participant. Carrington Valentine upgraded to a limited participant. Rashawn Gary still limited. He's playing. Aaron Jones still limited. I would assume he plays. Christian Watson also upgraded from a DNP to a limited participant. The only one that was not upgraded, besides David Bakhtiari and Zane Anderson, who I believe would be inactive anyway, is Devondre Campbell. Suffered an ankle injury in the first quarter of Sunday's game. He was a DNP yesterday, DNP today. I don't imagine he plays different ankle than the one he injured during the preseason. So it looks like the Packers will go with Isaiah McDuffie alongside Quay Walker there in the middle.
Yeah, and, you know, it feels like it's too early in the season for so many of these injuries to be continually popping up. But, you know, you look at the Lions and they've got, you know, a bunch of guys that are on the injured list as well. So, I mean, you know, we're 3 games into the season, and I think that the bye for the Packers is going to come at a really good time. And I wouldn't have thought that when the schedule first came out. If it's me, and if I'm, you know, Matt LaFleur, I think you want the bye somewhere in the middle of the season as opposed to the beginning of the season. Now, the last 2 years, it was in December. I thought that was way too late. I thought the guys felt like they were just tired by the time the bye came around, and you want to space that out as much as possible. But the way that this team is banged up right now, I think it's coming at a perfect time. I also think that these back-to-back games are coming at the worst possible time, and they've just been able to sustain themselves. And to be 2-1 going into this game, I guess you can say the same thing about the Lions, but to be 2-1 going into this game, I think that's huge for the Packers.
I could perseverate all day about the decision to not play guys last Sunday, to play guys on Thursday, the risks behind it. I've talked about it enough. The Packers are just fortunate. I don't want to say lucky, fortunate, because there was skill involved, to emerge victorious on Sunday, because the likelihood is they did say, you know what, let's give the guys a couple extra days rest, the ones who are close to playing but not quite there, and save them for the division game. So maybe we can count that as a bonus win against the Saints. Anyway, I'm done talking about that. After the break, more Packers talk. Believe we have our weekly visit with Jake from Charleston. This week's Packers gambling question, which I already gave him an answer to via text, but I'll expand upon it for everyone else after the break here on the Matt Schneidman Show on The Game.
And I can't help but to hear, no, I can't help but to hear in exchanging of words. What a beautiful wedding, what a beautiful wedding, says a bridesmaid to a waiter. But what a shame, the poor groom's bride is all.
Iron Jock loves fall weather, so much so that they have another fall-related offer for you. Now through October 1st, take 25% off all hoodies and long-sleeve t-shirts with promo code FALL25. That's FALL25. Four-way stretch, anti-static, and they will not smell from body odor. And our next guest has a lot of that. Guaranteed or your money back. Go to ironjock.com for details. That's ironjoc.com. Mr. Body Odor, let's get him on the line. Jake from Charleston with this week's Packers gambling question.
Wow, that was an unnecessary shot.
I don't think it. I've lived in the same house as you for several years of my life. I know what I'm talking about.
Listen, we all know that you weren't dancing a flow rider at any of those dances. We know you were sitting in the corner texting your mom, waiting to get picked up.
Hey, if you have any video of that, Jake, can you send that to me?
No. I did not go to high school with Jake. I went to college with Jake.
Okay. Either way.
But I can neither confirm nor deny that was me.
Any
awkwardly
videos,
dancing in the
Jake, would be
corner.
welcome. Just
He doesn't
as an
have any.
FYI.
I killed it in college. He knows that. He has several, I wouldn't say incriminating pictures of me, but probably embarrassing pictures of me. So I'll probably stop insulting him because I don't need them used against me.
They will be used against you, but in a more opportune time.
Yeah. All right. Get to your freaking question.
The gambling question of this segment. The Packers are plus 1.5, and the over-under is 46. And you know I love a Thursday night under.
You do love a Thursday night under. I don't hate that under. I know I texted you before this. I like Packers plus 1.5. The Lions' offensive line is incredibly banged up. Your fellow New Jersey native, Rashawn Gary, I think is right up there with the TJ Watts, Nick Bosa's, Micah Parsons, Myles Garrett's of the world. I think he'll eat. You know, the official injury report hasn't come out, so I think that's why the line hasn't moved. But we learned in locker room today that Aaron Jones and Christian Watson will both be back or are expected to be back for the Packers. And then Jair Alexander, Zach Tom, two other important starters were upgraded to limited in practice today. So listen, the Lions have a good team. I understand that. They beat the Packers last time these two teams played at Lambeau Field in Week 18 last year, but this will be the first game this season that the Packers offense has all its weapons. Watson hasn't played yet this year, as you know. Aaron Jones is back for the first time since Week 1. I think that's enough for the Packers to at least cover plus 1.5, but I don't hate the under.
All right, I'm going to do it. I'm going to make a little parlay action for the show.
A little
plus 1.5 under 46.
I don't think I've steered you wrong yet because I picked the Packers Week 1 for you, again, not by myself since I'm not allowed. Week 2, I changed my pick once I realized who the Packers had out. So I went with the Falcons to cover. Got that. What was my pick last week? I think I picked the Packers, did I?
Yeah.
And what were they? Were they minus 1.5? Or plus 1.5? I forget. Well, they won by 1. So if it was minus 1.5, I got it wrong. But this week I'm going Packers. My official pick is Packers plus 1.5. Are you saying you're going to parlay the total and the spread?
Yes, I will be doing that.
Yeah, listen. That's why you're not in a great position to buy a house right now, because you can't parlay an over and a spread from the same game. That's too risky.
Too risky, but it just feels so good when it hits.
When it does. 1 in 19 times. Well, what's for dinner tonight? What's your wife cooking? Or what are you cooking?
I'm actually cooking. We're making some kind of pasta with roasted squash, and I'm not looking forward to it, honestly.
Okay,
It's
excellent. It's not your forte?
No, not my favorite, but you know, you gotta please the wife sometimes. I'm not buying her a house, so the least I could do is make her a decent dinner that she likes.
Jesus. And that question was for Brendan too, our other good friend who I know is listening because he can't eat dinner. Doug, these are my two closest friends from college. The other one's listening. He can never eat until he knows what Jake is eating. So I asked that question because now Brendan can plan his dinner around what Jake and his wife are eating. So I'm just doing everyone a service around here.
Well, that's what the show's for.
That's what the show's for. All right. Get off my show.
Talk to you later.
All right.
Bye, Jake.
We have another caller. Austin, is he still on the line or did he hang up during
No, he's still there. Austin in Charlottesville.
Austin in Charlottesville. What's up?
Hey, Matt, you got me okay?
Yes, I do.
Great. Thanks for having me on again. I really appreciate it.
No problem.
I got two questions for you today, both contract related.
All right. One at a time.
One at a time. No, I got you. So to start, every snap that is played this NFL season, Rashawn Gary's contract is getting more and more expensive. At what point in this season do you think that Brian Gutekunst decides to go ahead and give him the extension that he deserves. And then second question.
One at a time. Let me answer.
One at a time? All right, go for it.
No, good question. It's definitely a hot topic. And, I was told that Gary's camp is willing to negotiate in season, so it's not like a Devontae Adams thing where they said, nope, we're putting off extension talks till the offseason. We saw how that ended. I think this is something that's going to get done in the middle of the season. And I'm not saying this because I have inside information. I'm just thinking out loud. Like, if Brian Gutekunst has gone to Rashawn Gary in his camp since the season started to try and make sure that price doesn't get any higher, get a deal done before it does, maybe Rashawn Gary's camp has just said, you know what? You didn't want to give him an extension before the season started. You wanted him to prove he was still the same player. Now we're going to make you sweat. Now we're going to not take a deal, bank on our guy continuing this level of play for a couple more weeks, and maybe we'll revisit a deal. But I would imagine Rashawn Gary wants to be paid among the highest edge rushers in the league. Nick Bosa, he's not going to surpass Nick Bosa. I would expect Rashawn to get somewhere in the $25, $26 million range. But man, if he keeps playing like this, that price is going to keep going up. He's not like that brand name that Parsons, Garrett, Watt, and Bosa are. But the production hasn't been that far off the last two seasons when Gary has been healthy. So I would anticipate that gets done sometime during the season, but I wouldn't be surprised if Gary's camp is playing a little bit of hardball, seeing how their guy has started. And I think I know what your second question is going to be about, but I'm going to let you ask it.
All right. So second question is, in your opinion, based off of their play the past couple of seasons, as well as their play to start this season, which admittedly has not been great, what happens either later on this season or in the off season with John Runyon Jr. and Josh Myers?
Yeah. Myers is 2021, right? And Runyon's 2020. So Myers isn't up until next year, until after next season. Runyon is up after this season. Runyon's been solid, but I think with the offensive line factory that they have in Green Bay and their ability to draft and develop guys, and this goes for A.J. Dillon as well, they can find a backup running back or a starting caliber right guard, put him on a rookie contract instead of having to pay John Runyon Jr. or A.J. Dillon a couple $1 million a year. It's a cold business, and Runyon has been reliable for these guys. Nothing spectacular, nothing bad. But if they're looking to pinch pennies, and they'll be in a better, spending space, able to spend more next offseason, I would imagine. Maybe they do something with Runyon for cheap, but I would be surprised if it happens during the season. I would expect him to probably end up testing free agency. And if he doesn't re-sign with the Packers, gun to my head, I say he doesn't, just because I think the Packers can find someone to fill in that spot for cheaper. They've done it before on the offensive line. Heck, Rasheed Walker looks pretty good at left tackle right now in place of David Bakhtiari. It just goes to show the Packers of all teams can plug and play these guys up front probably better than any other team. So Runyon's been a good player, but I would tend to side with he's not back unless the market kind of doesn't develop for him and the Packers can get him for cheaper than they think.
Gotcha.
So
well, that's all I got for you. So appreciate you having me on.
Appreciate you listening. Appreciate the call.
Thanks, Austin. Austin is gone.
Austin's gone. Listen, I think that's a good point. I thought he was going to ask about Jordan Love.
I did
and a
too.
Potential in-season contract extension. That's what I was going to say. I think, and I've said this before, if Jordan Love keeps up this level of play, I think he gets a long-term extension during the bye week, maybe.
That early. I guess I was going to ask you, how many games do you need? If you're Brian Gutekunst, I'm going to put you in the collective shoes of Brian Gutekunst and Russ Ball. They'll collectively get together and, figure out what the offer should be for Jordan Love. How many games do you need to see before you're ready to say, you know what, you're the guy? I mean, we've seen 3 pretty good ones so far.
Yeah, it's still too soon.
The one on Sunday, it was a great fourth quarter. There were some shaky moments, but, he's shown a lot of poise. He's shown a lot of maturity, shown great leadership. The guys in the locker room play hard for him. Guys in the locker room love him. But again, we're still talking about 3 games.
Yeah, it might be half a season.
Okay.
If he plays really well. Listen, it's hardball. So same thing could happen with David Mulugheta and Jordan Love's camp. Brian Gutekunst goes to them during the bye week and says, can we get you done now? Can we extend you now? We don't want the price going up. He wouldn't obviously say that.
Sure. But that's why, agents are smart enough to know that that's what that means.
Then Jordan's camp could go, we're going to let him finish out the season, play a couple more games. Obviously, he's under contract for not just this year, but next year. So he's not going anywhere, testing free agency. But I could see, if he continues playing well, Jordan Love's camp wanting to see the price go up a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a different scenario than Rashawn Gary because, the players' side representation probably has more leverage. Well, definitely has more leverage in Rashawn Gary's case because there's the threat of free agency much sooner.
Sure.
Jordan Love does not have that luxury, but he did get, I believe, a reported $13 million straight up before he had started his second game for the Green Bay Packers.
Mm-hmm.
So far, it looks like a pretty wise deal for the Packers, who are not on the hook for his 5th-year option, which would have been around $20 million. And now both sides can get something done when the Packers are 6-1. But listen, I think if they get by this Lions game and win, which I think they will, that's 3-1.
Mm-hmm.
Then they have the Raiders, the bye week, and the Broncos. Listen, you still got to play the games, as we saw this past weekend with the Cardinals beating the Cowboys, the Texans beating the Jaguars, and the Colts beating the Ravens. Anything is possible, except for the Bears beating the Chiefs. We knew that wasn't going to happen.
No, especially with Taylor there. I think the Packers, I don't want to say could easily be, but could feasibly be 5-1, entering that week 8 game with the Vikings here at Lambeau Field. Am I crazy? No, I don't think you're crazy. This team is better than I thought that they were going to be.
Well, I probably am, but not for that reason.
Well, perhaps. I think I need to know more from Jake. He needs to, spill some more tea on some more college stories before I'm ready to brand you as crazy.
He would 1,000% brand me as crazy. And there's a story that maybe I'll share on another show as to why.
Okay.
Anyway.
I look forward to that. Days of Syracuse gone by. But listen, I think that this Packers team, even with all of the injuries that they've had to deal with this season, and maybe it's because, I don't think the Saints are a putrid football team. I think they had a really bad collapse in the fourth quarter. But this Packers team is better than I thought that they were going to be. I don't think the Falcons are a terrible football team. And obviously they're the team that beat Green Bay earlier this year. Now the Bears, that's a different story. The Bears have shown that they're just god awful. Yeah. And I don't know that they're ever going to get out of this tailspin that they've been in for the last 25 years, with the exception of the year they went to the Super Bowl, which was about the 2006 season. And then, 5 years later when they were in the NFC Championship game and lost to the Packers. So, they've had a couple of decent years, but mostly they've been wandering out in the wilderness for a long, long time. And I don't know how you get out of that. But this Packers team just seems like they've been well constructed, well put together. I always thought they were. I just thought that they were really young and weren't ready for prime time yet. And maybe they are. And maybe they're playing to the level of their competition and maybe just a little bit above it. But yeah, I don't think that it's crazy to think that they could be 6-1 at one point this season. And I would love to be wrong about my early season prediction because, yeah, it's just amazing to see how much, or you just walk around town on a Monday after a win and how much happier everybody is. The locker room is a happier place to be. Just the stadium is a happier place to be. Wandering around the hallways of the radio station, people are just happier about that too. So it's amazing to see what football can do in the state of Wisconsin. It's just, it is, people live by it. It. You've seen it. And it's not just a Wisconsin thing, but there are people who turn over half of their house to a shrine for the Green Bay Packers. There are so many Packers basements. People paint their cars. It's a way of life. And, there's only 17 of these during the season. And when you can come away with a couple of them that maybe you didn't expect, it's going to lift everybody's spirits.
Certainly off to a good start here for all those Packer diehards, of which there are many. After the break, our weekly visit with the voice of the Packers, Wayne Larrivee. Among other things, we will recap our visit to Sammy's, featuring just Wayne and I from Saturday night. Stick with us after the break here on the Matt Schneidman Show on the Game. We'll touch on all that. said I wouldn't know this song, but Wayne will.
I said you might not know this song. This is well before your time.
I was going to say it's Bottle of White, Bottle of Red. I don't know the actual name. Wayne, what is the name of this song?
Gosh, I'm embarrassed to say I have no idea.
Scenes from an Italian Restaurant by Billy Joel. Come on, guys.
Listen.
Oh, for goodness sake.
The only Billy I recognize is Billy Schmid.
Me too, Batty. Me too.
Listen, this conversation with Wayne Larrivee every week is sponsored by Coal Investment Group, the retirement specialist, and Pella Windows and Doors of Wisconsin. See, I got so caught up in the Billy Joel that I forgot to read who sponsors this segment. Anyway, there were no bottles of red or bottles of white, you like that transition, at Sammy's at our table on Saturday night. But Wayne and I had a nice dinner, some nice pizza, the pesto cheese bread. Wayne got a pizza. We had a nice time on Saturday night, Wayne, didn't we? And a couple people came up, said hello, thanked us for our services. Services. It sounds like we served in the Marine Forces. Thanked us for our services, I guess, covering the Packers. We had a nice time.
Yeah, no, it was a good time. And, I thought you were a little disappointed in your margarita pizza there when you asked for a box to take it home. But then again, I didn't know what your eating habits were like. So, but no, I thought you got the wrong thing on the menu, but that was up to you. That's your decision. You're a big boy.
Yeah. As I told you, I am someone, and people can probably tell by my soaking wet 165, 170 pound physique, despite the fact that I'm 6'2". I don't eat entire meals all at once. Like if I sit down for a big meal, I don't eat it all at once. I'll eat some of it, take some home, eat it later. I eat like constantly throughout the day instead of just 3 big meals all at once. That's what I did because guess what? I went home and ate the pizza the next day. I went to Margarita's last night. I had 2 tacos, took the third home, ate it for breakfast this morning. Like that's just how I am. What's so funny?
You're the best. Yeah, we had a nice time, good discussion, and it was good. And you're right, a lot of people, I tell you what, Matt, you're having an impact on the community here because a lot of people recognized you, and I just hope people weren't listening in on what we were talking about. That's all.
I don't remember everything we were talking about, but I'm sure there was some stuff that probably isn't fit for these airwaves, but some stuff that is fit for these airwaves. It sounds like Romeo Doubs and Christian Watson spilled the beans in the locker room today that Aaron Jones and Christian Watson will be back. What could that do for this Packers offense if numbers 33 and 9 are back on the field in whatever capacity on Thursday night?
I think that's big. Even if they're on a pitch count, that's huge for the team. But also, Matt, I think what's even more important is what's the offensive line going to look like?
Yeah.
What's Zach Tom's status going to be? What is David Bakhtiari's status going to be? The other thing about this is the Detroit injury report is worth watching. And these injury reports for a Thursday night game are ridiculous because they're just estimates. It's hardly that you can't really tell. But Detroit, they need to get Taylor Decker back. Their offensive line, their great offensive line is a mess right now. They've moved people around. They've had to do that. But if they get Taylor Decker back at left tackle and put Penei Sewell back at right tackle, they're not going to have Vaitai apparently, but they'll be back to, close to 100%. And I think that's the key in this matchup is the 2 offensive lines and the physicality of the game, because Thursday night games are tough. I mean, your offense, your X's and O's, all that stuff kind of takes a back seat on a Thursday night because you haven't had time to prep any of that for the most part. And I find on Thursday nights, the team that comes out more physical team is going to win more often than not on the Thursday night.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you bring up a good point. If the Packers, there's a chance they trot out an offensive line with only 2 of their regular starters. We know Elton Jenkins isn't going to play, or we assume, I guess, his sprained MCL could magically heal, but you get the point. He's not going to play. If David Bakhtiari and Zach Tom don't play, though Zach Tom was upgraded to an estimated limited participant in today's practice, that didn't happen. They just had a walkthrough. Aiden Hutchinson can do some damage. He did damage against this team in week 18 last season. But on the flip side, someone the Packers didn't have in that game was Rashawn Gary because he was nursing his torn ACL. How is he doing what he's doing? He had 3 sacks in his 3rd game back from a torn ACL. You mentioned the Lions banged up O-line. This seems like a game Rashawn Gary could really eat. And listen, I don't know if they're going to take him off that pitch count yet, but what he's done in 3 games while on a pitch count, he's shown that ain't no worry about Russ. He's picked up right where he's left off.
No, I agree. He's a monster. And I mean that in a very positive way. The other thing he brings, Matt, to that side of the football, and you were there and we talked to Joe Barry about it. He's when he went out, they didn't just lose an all-pro player, okay? They lost a piece of their heart and soul on that side of the football. And it took them literally weeks to get back to an edge where they could, where they were functioning at an efficient rate, and they played well down the stretch for the most part. But Rashawn Gary is so key to that. And you say heart and soul. Defense is played with heart and soul. Defense is not X's and O's, there's X's and O's to it, but it's played with, intensity, want to. It's all of those things that Rashawn Gary brings to the picture. C.J. Gardner-Johnson is not going to play for the Lions. He basically changed their secondary this year. His approach to the game, the heart and soul of that secondary for the Lions is C.J. Gardner-Johnson, who's not going to play this week. But those players that are like that, especially on the defensive side of the football, they make a difference in intangible ways that have everything to do with the success of that unit.
Without a doubt. And listen, I think this could be another one-score game that could matter in a big way a couple months from now when, I don't know, these two teams certainly seem like they are, I don't want to say the class of the NFC North, but they're certainly ahead of the 2 teams that are 0-3. Wayne, you've called games for the Bears, the Packers for a long time. I am inclined to say, listen, it's kind of like the Yankees and Red Sox. The Yankees and Rays is kind of like the new quote-unquote rivalry in the AL East just because teams that aren't as good kind of fade off. The Packers and Bears will always be the historic rivalry, but could we be looking at the start of the next 1-2 punch in the NFC North with the Packers and Lions, with kind of how these two teams are set up with young cores? The big difference is obviously at quarterback. Lions have a veteran, Packers don't. But with the young cores both these teams have, and with the starts the Vikings and Bears have gotten off to, could this be the new kind of 1-2 punch in the NFC North where these two teams are duking it out for years to come?
You could certainly say that. We're in the infancy. We're in the infancy of that.
Right.
For a long time, the Lions couldn't win a football game on Wisconsin soil. I mean, they went decades without being able to win. Now, lately, they've been winning. And I believe more often than not against the Packers, the Lions have been winning. I think they've won 3 of the last 4 games, including both last year. So, yeah, I think there's a healthy rivalry developing. For a while in the 90s and through the early 2000s and even the 2010s, it was, the Packers and Vikings was the big matchup in the NFC North. Yes, the Bears will always be historic. That's always the historic matchup. But, I think when you've got teams going at one another and their games may or may not decide who wins the division, that's when rivalries develop. And especially in an age, Matt, where players are transient, okay? They change. And it's not like, Butkus and Ditka and Sayers playing for the Bears and Bart Starr and Jim Taylor and Paul Harney for the Packers year after year. They play one another. It's not like that today. Free agency, you turn over your team, that type of thing. What we perceive as fans as rivalries isn't so much the rivalry the locker room is keying in on. So, yeah, I think the Lions and Packers, we know how big a game this is. Obviously, all of us know how big a game it is because these are the 2 teams that may be battling it out for the division championship, possibly. But we've got a lot of ball game to play. Without a doubt.
2 more quick ones before we get out of here. What is your game day routine for a night game? I know we talked at dinner about, getting there a couple hours early for a noon game might be a little bit of a struggle, getting out of bed. What do you do during the day for a night game? I personally can't find anything to do. And I'm not going to go to Oneida Casino like maybe I have in the past before night games. What do you do during the day before?
You really?
Don't worry about that. That was the old me. What does Wayne Larrivee do to kill time before a night game?
Oh, boy. Well, specifically this one, well, I'll be coming from Milwaukee. I will probably get a workout, hit a bucket or two of golf balls, make it up here by around 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and be ready to go at 5.
That's fair enough. I probably won't hit golf balls.
That's really what I'll probably end up doing. But, you're right. And I hate it when we're on the road because there is nothing to do. You know what I mean? And you look over your notes, you study your stuff, and you do all that stuff. And you know what? If it's not, if you don't have it down by game day, it's not going to get down. So there's no reason to go back. But no, I'll prepare the notes and everything and that type of deal. But that's not going to take all day. And so, you got to kind of find things to do. I don't like night games at all.
The game next week, there are some things to do in that away city, right? Las Vegas?
Oh, yeah.
Well, I know
you probably don't have to lead.
I'm not staying on the strip.
To do what you would normally do.
Exactly. Not what I would normally do. I don't think you're allowed to gamble as a team employee, correct? I'm just trying to save you here,
Correct.
Wayne. There you go.
I don't even bet on horse racing, although I follow it religiously. I don't even bet.
Really?
No.
Okay. And lastly, I want to ask you about the most important, I shouldn't say most important, the most newsworthy story in the NFL. Shout out Caroline Hogan, big Chiefs fan. It happened at Arrowhead Stadium this past Sunday. Wayne, I don't assume that you're a Swiftie. I would assume you know what a Swiftie is. I don't know if any of your kids are, but what do you think of, listen, you're an old school guy. What do you think of Travis Kelce kind of shooting his shot, inviting Taylor Swift, who is the most famous person on planet Earth, to a Chiefs game, and a couple days later, she's in a suite with Mrs. Kelce? This is an example for men everywhere.
Yeah. Oh, no question. There is something to be learned here, boys and girls. No. And by the way, I do like Taylor Swift, and I do like some of her music. I do. But
okay.
No, I'm not a Swiftie. I'm not a Swiftie, but I do like her. I thought that was really great. That was fun at Arrowhead Stadium. Here's a dreadful game, and they keep showing this Taylor Swift up there having a ball and cheering and all this other stuff. And the point is this: if you want something, at least apply, right? At least shoot your shot. And as Belichick said, Travis Kelce's made a lot of big catches. This might be the biggest one.
It's such a wise move for Travis Kelce to be like, come watch me play the Chicago Bears, because this one's going to be easy. I'll look really good playing the worst team in the NFL.
Oh, my. You're piling it on like an old Packers fan.
Don't worry.
That dumpster fire doesn't need any more ignition down there.
I'm just trying to make some good radio. That's all.
Yes. You're just looking for clicks. I get it.
Yeah, right. Anyway, get out of here, Wayne. Appreciate you taking the time to visit. As always, we'll talk to you on Thursday at the stadium.
Always appreciate you, Matty. It's great to talk to you. Talk to you next week.
Yes, sir. That conversation with Wayne Larrivee was sponsored by Coal Investment Group, the retirement specialist, and Pella Windows and Doors of Wisconsin. Wayne likes Taylor Swift, and I do think there is a difference between being a Swiftie and liking Taylor Swift songs. I am neither, but I don't want to say that too loud. Hopefully you didn't hear me say that, because I don't need her super fans coming after me.
December 3rd, Lambeau Field. Prime time. Book it.
Can you imagine if she shows up? She's in a suite eating some of those soggy cheese curds.
You brought up the soggy cheese curds last night, too.
I know.
They're salty. They are a little bit saltier than I'd like.
John Kuhn and I talked about on our podcast today, what's more likely? Taylor Swift is still with Travis Kelce, or Jonathan Owens is still on the team? We could be getting a Simone Biles-Taylor Swift collab at Lambeau Field at some point.
Now you're talking.
Anyway,
Celebrity Central.
That's a discussion for another day. This has been the Tuesday edition of the Matt Schneidman Show. Tomorrow, Football Feast. Thursday, no show because there's a game. We appreciate you listening on the game. We'll catch you on Friday.